It was the kind of night where nothing seemed out of place. April 18, 2015, just another ordinary evening in Lubbock, Texas. But behind the walls of a quiet home, something horrifying was about to unfold. At exactly 3 a.m., a 911 dispatcher received a call. A woman's voice, trembling, desperate. "David, please, stop." A loud noise cut through the line. A gunshot. Then another. The voice on the other end let out a final scream. And then, nothing. When officers arrived at the scene, they found the front door closed, the back door forced open. Inside, the smell of gunpowder still lingered in the air. The bedroom told the whole story. On the bed lay Jennifer Cruz, 27 years old, her body riddled with bullets. Across the room, Albert "Bo" Martinez, 30 years old, lifeless on the floor. No signs of a struggle, just sheer, merciless execution. But what puzzled detectives wasn't just the brutality, it was the precision. Nothing in the house had been stolen. The alarm system had been deactivated. The only way someone could do that? They needed to know the code. Someone Jennifer trusted had done this. As police combed through the scene, they found something even more telling. The 911 call had recorded the entire murder. And in that recording, Jennifer had repeatedly spoken one name. "David, why are you doing this?" The name sent chills down the spines of investigators. Because David Sillo wasn't just any ex-boyfriend. He was the father of Jennifer's children. A man she had been with for over 12 years before they finally separated. But why now? Why would he come back a year later, in the dead of night, and execute not only his ex, but also the man she had moved on with? Detectives wasted no time. Within hours, they had David Sillo in custody. But what followed in the interrogation room was a performance so unconvincing, it was almost laughable. David thought he could outsmart the police. He thought he could twist the story. He thought he could make them believe him. But what he didn't know. The truth was already on tape. What really happened that night? And why would a man risk everything to carry out such a heinous crime? The answers are more twisted than you think. Before we get into the interrogation, let me ask you this: if you were a detective, and you had a 911 call with the victim's last words calling out a name, would you immediately arrest that person? Or would you wait for more evidence? Think about it, because in the next part, you'll see just how deep this case really goes. The small, sterile interrogation room felt almost too quiet. The fluorescent light above flickered slightly, casting a dull glow over the table. Across from two seasoned detectives sat David Sillo, his body tense, his hands clasped together. This was a man who thought he had rehearsed his story well enough. He was wrong. "All right, David, thanks for coming in. This is just a conversation, okay?" one of the detectives said, keeping his tone light. David nodded quickly. Too quickly. Yeah. No problem. What's up?" The detective leaned back, pretending to be casual. "So, we're looking into something that happened last night. Just need some details from you." David swallowed hard. He didn't know that officers were already watching his every movement. They were trained to spot nervous tics, shifting in his chair, avoiding eye contact, tapping his fingers on the table. "When's the last time you saw Jennifer?" I don't know. A few days ago. Thursday, I think." "Thursday? Yeah. You didn't see her after that?" "No, man. Been home all weekend." Lie. David didn't know it, but his phone had already given him away. Detectives pressed forward. "See, David, we went to Jennifer's house today. And she's gone. Somebody shot her." Silence. And then, David's first words. "That's not true. Think about that. If someone told you that the mother of your children had just been murdered, how would you react? Shock? Anguish? Maybe even tears. David's first instinct was to deny reality. The detective stared at him. "It's true, David. We need to figure out who did this. And we need to ask you a few things." David shifted in his seat. "I mean, I had nothing to do with it." Again, defense first. No grief. No concern for his own children. The walls were closing in, and David didn't even realize it yet. Detectives let him talk, knowing that every word he spoke was digging him into a deeper hole. Because while David thought he was being careful, there was one thing he didn't account for. The 911 call. Jennifer had recorded her own murder. And David? His name was all over it. The detectives weren't going to confront him with that evidence just yet. They wanted to let him twist and turn, trap himself in his own lies. Because when they finally played that tape, there would be nowhere left to run. Before we dive into that explosive moment, what do you think? If you were in that room, watching David's body language, hearing his responses, would you trust him? Or would you feel like something wasn't adding up? Hold on tight, because the next part is where David's entire world comes crashing down. David Silo was running out of time. Every lie he told, every excuse he made, it was all unraveling in front of him. And he could feel it. But what he didn't know. The detectives had been waiting for this moment. They had let him talk. They had let him think he was in control. But now, they were about to destroy his version of the story. One detective leaned in, voice low and steady. "David, we have the 911 call." David's head snapped up. "What?" "Jennifer recorded her own murder." Silence. David swallowed hard. He blinked rapidly, as if trying to process what he had just heard. She called the police." "Yes. And she said your name. Over and over. She begged you to stop. And then, gunshots." The color drained from David's face. His hands started trembling. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The detective didn't look away. "You were there, David. Don't insult us by pretending otherwise. The only question now is, why?" David's chest rose and fell rapidly. His mind was racing. "I didn't mean to kill them." "Then why did you bring a gun?" I just wanted to talk to her." The detective slammed his hand on the table. People who just want to talk don't disable alarm systems. They don't kick in doors. They don't fire multiple rounds into two unarmed people. David squeezed his eyes shut. It was a mistake. A mistake. Jennifer was on the phone begging for her life, David. You executed them. Tears formed in the corners of David's eyes, but whether they were from guilt or fear, it was impossible to tell. Then came the final blow. "Tell us where the gun is, David." His shoulders slumped. His lips parted slightly, and in a voice so low it was almost a whisper, he muttered. "Near the old CVS. By the trees." That was it. The confession. Detectives had him. But the real question is, was David actually sorry? Or was this just a man finally realizing he couldn't escape what he had done? What do you think? If Jennifer hadn't recorded that call, do you think David would have ever confessed? Next, we'll break down the chilling details that prove this murder was planned all along, and how David's own words sealed his fate. Don't go anywhere. The confession was shocking. The location of the murder weapon was confirmed. But for detectives, the job wasn't over yet. They needed proof. David Silo had admitted to the killings, but as any seasoned investigator knows, a confession can be twisted, retracted, or manipulated in court. Evidence, on the other hand, that never lies. Within minutes of David revealing where he had hidden the gun, officers arrived at the scene. Just as he described, the Glock .40 was found behind an abandoned CVS, buried in the brush. And right there, in black and white, the forensics report would later confirm it, this was the murder weapon. But the evidence didn't stop there. Inside Jennifer's house, tucked away in a closet, detectives found an empty Glock .40 case. The very same kind of gun David had admitted to owning. And then came the shell casings, 2 of them, both recovered from the bedroom, both a perfect match to the bullets found in Jennifer and Beau's bodies. And if that wasn't enough, a new witness stepped forward. This witness revealed that just one day before the murders, David had tried to buy a silencer for his gun. Now, think about that for a second. A silencer. That's not something someone buys for self-defense. That's not something you buy if you're not planning to pull the trigger. This was never about an argument gone wrong. This was a calculated, cold-blooded execution. And then, forensic experts performed one final test. A gunshot residue, GSR, test on David's hands. Even though he had tried to clean himself up, even though hours had passed, traces of gunpowder were still there. David was completely, undeniably guilty. But here's the most disturbing part. What did David do after the murders? Did he run? Did he turn himself in? Did he break down in regret? No. Just 2 hours after gunning down Jennifer and Beau in cold blood, David had sex with another woman. That's the kind of man we're dealing with. This wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't self-defense. It was pure evil. Now, with overwhelming evidence stacked against him, there was only one thing left. The trial. Would the jury see through his lies? Would they give him the punishment he deserved? In the next part, we'll take you inside the courtroom, where David Sillow would finally face justice. But before that, what do you think? Was David ever truly sorry? Or was his confession just another manipulative act to try and save himself? Let me know your thoughts. And don't go anywhere, because justice is coming. The moment had arrived. David Sillow was led into the courtroom, his hands cuffed, his head slightly bowed. The man who once thought he could lie his way out of murder was now standing trial for his life. Across the room, Jennifer Cruz's family sat in quiet sorrow. Her mother, her siblings, her friends, all of them waiting, praying that justice would finally be served. Beside them, Beau Martinez's family. They had lost a son, a brother, a friend. And today, they wanted answers. The prosecution, a case built on ironclad evidence. The state's attorney didn't waste time. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence will show that David Sillow murdered Jennifer Cruz and Albert Martinez in cold blood. And he did so because of one thing, jealousy. She laid out the entire case. The 911 call, where Jennifer pleaded for her life. The gun, found exactly where David said it would be. The bullet casings, a perfect match to his weapon. The attempt to buy a silencer, proving premeditation. The gunshot residue on David's hands. And then, she hit them with the most damning piece of all. 2 hours after killing Jennifer and Beau, David didn't run. He didn't cry. He didn't even show regret. Instead, he was with another woman. The jury shifted uncomfortably. That wasn't the behavior of a man who made a mistake. That was the behavior of a cold-blooded killer. The defense tries to fight back. David's lawyer tried to soften the blow. This was a tragic event. My client was in emotional distress. He went to Jennifer's house to talk, not to kill. But that argument fell apart immediately. He disabled the alarm system. He broke into the home. He fired multiple shots. This wasn't emotional distress. This was a calculated execution. And the jury could see right through it. The verdict, a moment of silence. The courtroom was tense as the jury left to deliberate. How long would it take? Hours? Days? No. They came back in under an hour. Everyone rose. The judge spoke. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman stood. Yes, Your Honor. A long pause. And then. We, the jury, find the defendant, David Sillow, guilty of first-degree murder. Jennifer's mother let out a quiet sob. Bo's family hugged one another. David? He didn't move. But the worst was yet to come. The judge's voice was firm. David Sillow, for the murders of Jennifer Cruz and Albert Martinez, you are sentenced to life in prison without parole. David clenched his jaw, his face emotionless. No chance of freedom. No escape. Just a lifetime behind bars. But what about Jennifer's children? Justice had been served, but there were still 2 young lives left in the aftermath. How would they grow up without their mother? Without their father? In the next part, we'll talk about the real victims of this crime, the children left behind. But before that, what do you think? Did David get what he deserved? Or do you think his punishment should have been even harsher? Tell me your thoughts. And stay with me, because this tragedy is far from over. David Sillow was locked away. The justice system had done its job. But let's be honest, justice doesn't bring Jennifer and Bo back. Their families? Their friends? Their children? They're the ones living with the consequences of David's actions. The children left behind. Jennifer's 2 children lost both of their parents that night. Not only was their mother stolen from them, but their father, the man who was supposed to protect them, was now a convicted murderer. Imagine growing up with that reality. Jennifer's mother, who took them in, spoke about the pain they carry every single day. They still wait for their mom to come home. They ask about her. They don't understand why she's not here anymore. No child should ever have to live with that kind of trauma. A story about control, not love. Some might wonder, did David ever truly love Jennifer? The answer is no. Love doesn't control. Love doesn't threaten. Love doesn't kill. This was never about love, it was about power and ownership. David believed that if he couldn't have Jennifer, no one could. And instead of walking away like a real man, he chose to take her life in cold blood. It's a dangerous mindset, and it's one that still exists today. How many times have we seen stories like this? How many times has jealousy turned deadly? The answer? Too many. What can we learn from this? If you take one thing away from this story, let it be this. If someone makes you feel unsafe in a relationship, trust your instincts. Get help. If an ex keeps showing up, refusing to let go, take it seriously. And if you know someone going through this, don't wait until it's too late. Jennifer deserved to live. Bo deserved to live. And the next Jennifer? She might still be out there, right now, trapped in a dangerous situation. Let's make sure her story ends differently. Let's keep this conversation going. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think about this case? Could anything have been done to stop it before it was too late? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story important, please take a moment to subscribe. Because the more we talk about these stories, the more awareness we bring, and maybe, just maybe, we can prevent another tragedy. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay safe.